So I was offered a free 4x2x2 PVC enclosure in exchange for a review by Zen Habitats. Now, Zen Habitats are opening their UK store, which is why it's in line with offering it to UK keepers, which is why I've been offered it. As you can see, I've got a full wall of vivariums behind me now, so I have no space. So what I've done is I've given the enclosure to Ellie from Banoffee Pie Pythons, and we've put one of her royals in this 4x2x2 to see how it goes. So my first impressions of the enclosure, because I was actually there to put up the enclosure before we filmed this video. Now, when you open it up, it's obviously flat pack, and it's got hinges along the PVC edges. Now, it's kind of like an accordion where it's like this, and it's like the top, the back, and the bottom all flat packed, and then when you open it, it like extends outwards. So you would have your side there, your back, and then your top, and then all you do is slot in your side panels, pull up a pin, slot it in, and it's in. That's all it takes to build it. Now you do have to kind of get it right. If you don't actually do it in the correct way and get all the clips right and get the pins to go in, when you finally screw in the little screws with the Allen key provided, it won't be fully tight along the seams, but after a couple of tries and undoing it and redoing it, the edges go completely tight. Personally, I would still put a bead of silicone down the edge, but I think you probably could get away with not doing it if you put it together correctly. I won't say that it took a quick amount of time, because we were kind of floundering putting it together, figuring out how this goes together, but if you had prior knowledge of how it went together, I could have done it in like 5 minutes. So essentially, you need no tools whatsoever, and you just screw in some screws with the Allen key provided, and that's literally it. It's essentially like putting together Lego. Another thing that I noticed straight away was that it's ridiculously light. I'm talking like almost feather light for an enclosure. Now, if you don't have someone to carry things around with you, me moving all of these from the past location into this room was ridiculously difficult. So a 4x2x2 enclosure that I could literally carry by myself is ridiculous. So that is a major advantage to going for that, down that PVC route. And then another benefit is obviously the longevity factor of the PVC is pretty much going to last as long as you keep it for, rather than our meridian enclosures here that will, you might get a decade out of them, depending on how much humidity. If you get a certain corner wet and it soaks some bits up, generally you're going to want to replace them if you get them wet enough. Whereas the PVC, you're not going to have that problem. Now, the downsides were, along the mesh top, I think the screen mesh is absolutely brilliant, by the way. I think it's large enough to allow a decent amount of UV light through. It shouldn't be too large of a reduction. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's not as large as the custom Reptile Habitats mesh, which is only 22% reduction in transmission, but it's also not as fine as Exoterra mesh, which is around 50% reduction. So generally it's not going to reduce that much screen compared to if you went and got an Exoterra, for example. So that's reasonably okay. The thing that I wasn't impressed by is that there's a metal bar that goes across the top, which obviously offers support to this screen so that it's not such a floppy screen. The problem is that you can get your finger up in between this metal bar and the mesh. Now, part of me does worry about something putting their head through and then not realising their body won't fit, and then panicking and then slipping and then hanging from their head off this bar and this wire. Or whether they would just fall straight down, I don't know. But that did concern both myself and Ellie when we first saw it. Again, Ellie's going to keep an eye on it and see what happens and how the snake behaves, whether she even goes anywhere near that at all. Obviously the workaround that you could do is just put things on top of the enclosure that press down against the screen so it's flat against those bars, and then obviously the issue is resolved essentially. But that is there. Another thing is the substrate barrier. You plop it inside and then they give you double sticky tape to put either side of the enclosure either side of the PVC panel, so that when you press it against the front edge, it's obviously flush with the front and you get a nice substrate barrier. Personally, I think for the price, I think it could be doing better than double sticky tape. I think it should either be some sort of acrylic glue they provide or something or other, but for the price you pay, I would expect more than double sticky tape. Depending on who you are and obviously your own finances, the price is £400 for a 4x2x2 in the UK. Now, I guess you are paying for longevity there. You are paying for PVC and then water resistant and completely rot resistant. So it depends who you are. But you can get a 4x2x2 meridian enclosure in the UK for around 180. So it depends what your priorities are. For arid stuff, I probably wouldn't go that route, because if I'm going dry, I will go melanin. But if you're going for something high humidity and you want something that's going to last, then you kind of get what you pay for, I suppose. And the last thing that I will say is the enclosure is actually miles better looking in person than you think it's going to be. When I see them online, I think they look kind of cheap and plasticky, but when I actually unboxed it, I was actually really impressed by it. And Ellie obviously loves it. But let's look at setting up the actual enclosure for the ball python. So we are doing a mixed substrate of Reptile bark to forest floor by ZoomEd, and we just want to create a nice mixed forest floor looking enclosure. This cork log that Ellie bought has so many openings and it's such a nice shape that it's got plenty of opportunities for us to get creative here and create some nice cryptic basking scenarios. It's so large that it's going to be a massive benefit in terms of a break in the line of sight in the enclosure. So if I place it diagonal, that should section off areas to make the royal feel more comfortable in such a large enclosure. I'm just building up cork around it so it doesn't look so... So when you're front on, it doesn't look so like blur. I'll just dig that out. So what we're going to do here is use this rope toy as a climbing structure, because Ellie does something similar with her chameleons. And obviously Ellie and I know about how they are semi-arboreal and have a tendency to climb. I thought it'd be a cool opportunity to try something and to see if she uses it.
She's doing better than when I first got her, because when I first got her, she literally just all she thought about was food. She didn't know how to use a hide.
Probably never had one.
No.
So she came straight from rack then?
From living on cat litter.
Cat litter?
In a drawer.
So this is like a big step for her then?
Yeah.
Nice. So we've also added this dragon plant, I think it's called. I think it's called a dragon plant. Yeah, it looks cool. I'm playing with the lighting configuration. I've got the basking spot at the back left. Now that I'm looking at it, I'm thinking that back pocket would be the perfect place for the pinstripe female to bask, with that visual barrier being there. So I think I'm going to move the pothos away. Also move the pothos towards the side which the light is coming in from the window, meaning that it should get visible light naturally. So I think that's what I'm going to do. This did look nice hanging over the cork, but I also think functionally wise, I also think the functionality of having that basking spot with that cryptic area behind it is also more important. So that's what I think we're going to do. So I'm going to pop that over there. Okay, so what I think the best course of action is you'll see up here, is that I've positioned the heat lamp over the cork round. This is on top of here, getting to around 35-ish. So when the Royal sits there, it should get to like 36, 38, maybe 40, which is what some people do give their Regis as a basking surface temp. So that's pretty cool. But also, internally that log will warm. So now that Royal will have the option of heliothermy or just stigmathermy. So like out in the open basking, or just like dark and warm. So I've placed that prototype lamp over the back area down there. So what the Royals are gonna have is this area back here to sit under the UV in privacy. There's obviously a hole here that it's going to be able to do, but also if we look down the gap, there's a massive hole down there basically, and I don't know if you can see or not, but should be able to cryptic bask in there like that, under the UV.
She's like, what on earth is that? I'm quite happy, to be fair. She hasn't just... Oh, she's going to run in the log. She didn't just like instantly go, ah! Look how cute she is.